Hello, my name is Julius D. Spain Sr., and I'm the current president of the Arlington branch of the NAACP, Arlington, Virginia.
I'm Scott Pedowitz. I'm the Government Affairs Manager at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce.
My name is Luis Aguilar, and I am the Director for CASA in Virginia.
Hi, I'm Libby Garvey, Vice Chair of the Arlington County Board. Join us in conversation. Community engagement is kind of much of what I do on the county board because we serve the community, and if we don't know what the community wants, we can't serve the community well. So it's crucial. And we're working really hard on how to do community engagement. It's such a complex area, and I'm hoping to get some ideas from you guys. We have people, we kind of crowdsource things. I mean, we have part of the community engagement is people like with our Citizens Emergency Response Team, our CERT team, that they're helping out in emergencies. We've got people that help out like getting invasive weeds out of parks. We have people who come to us and testify. That's what you think about a lot of times at meetings, telling us what we need to know for some program we're going to adopt or some decision that we need to make. That's all important. We're working really hard on making sure that we have kind of a continuum of different kinds of engagement, so that some people could come and just talk to us once if they wanted, send in an email or come to a meeting, or other people might want to get involved in a commission and do it long term, and kind of everything in between. But there's always more to do because this is such a diverse community. And so I would love to hear some ideas from you all on how to reach out. We've got Progressive Progress Network that we're doing, and that's pulling. I was at a meeting, it was amazing. We had all kinds of people who don't usually come to county board meetings that we don't hear from. Some of them didn't speak English. We had translators there talking about housing issues at the one I was at. And that's just a great way for us to get information from people that we don't usually see. But it's hard to know. If it's people you don't usually see, you don't always know who you're not seeing, who's not in the room that needs to be there. So I would love to hear some ideas from you all, because I can tell that we've got a great diversity of folks here.
Well, that's great. So Libby, at the NAACP, we've been around for 110 years, and currently serving as the president. Civic engagement is one of the top tier projects and issues that the NAACP does year in and year out. I will tell you, here in Arlington, what we've been doing as of lately is reaching out to organizations like the League of Women Voters. Get Out the Vote for us was really a big issue back in 2018, where the NAACP, not only at the national level, but even at local levels, got involved, and we galvanized and brought people together for common causes. The NAACP, we work on political issues, education issues, social issues, and civic engagement is right there at the top. And we're looking to do more here in Arlington.
Well, that'd be great. Feel free to invite me. I've been invited
I will.
before, but it's
You've been
good.
there plenty of times with us. Thank you.
And I think, Julius, you touch on a really important part of civic engagement, and that is touching lots of different aspects of the community. You talk about educational and social and political. The top line of my bio is that I'm Government Affairs Manager at the Chamber, but I also spend a lot of my free time in civic engagement. I'm the president of the board for the Clarendon Alliance. I'm president of my civic association in Clarendon and Courthouse. And I've been involved in a number of different ways. And what's fun about the engagement I've had is by engaging with people in different settings, in different fora, sometimes with similar and different people, I get to hear different sides of the same discussion. For me, the question is, how do we make sure that everybody's hearing that and we're not getting lost in our silos?
And I think that's what you shared. I think that's kind of the point, the main point. How do we improve that? I think we're always looking at that. So with CASA, we focus not on a specific issue, but like NAACP, we focus on the term justice. We focus on justice for the immigrant communities, but as part of the main community, which is what you represent and what you serve. And so that's something that we always talk about with the community specifically, regardless of the language, regardless of what is it that we're talking about. We are always stressing one thing, and which is the fundamental part of civic engagement, which is the political system, who governs, how they represent, and why. And so we go through all of this, what we call political formation for all of the community members. And so we talk about why a delegate is called a delegate, because we delegate that power, why a representative is there, what does the county board do? So that's part of one of the levels of civic engagement. But this is how we're framing that conversation initially, specifically with the immigrant community, because ultimately when we're looking at elected officials and public servants, we really want people to not understand the titles or just the structures, but in reality what they fundamentally do. So when it comes to civic engagement, obviously it's such a broad topic that we can talk about organizing and voting and how we're talking to folks and the specific issues and elected officials. But at the end of the day, I think it's, are we driving that message home? Are we truly being aligned to what is it that we're doing? And so that's why I'm glad that we're having this conversation.
Yeah. It seems to me in the immigrant community, many people come from countries where civic engagement is not done the way we do it here, if at all, and that's kind of a barrier that we face and that folks face here. What do you think about that?
I think it really is dependent. I can't speak broadly, but it is definitely dependent on where someone comes from, whether they have been disenfranchised at home, and then when they come here, they have this sense of like, oh, this is what it was there, and this is what it could be here. So that's why we drive that message of here we have this opportunity. At the same time, that's why this current moment that we're living at the federal level and the closeness that we have to Washington, D.C. directly affects that type of communication. So that's why we stress the hyperlocal importance of being engaged at the hyperlocal level, especially with community members, that yes, there are these broader things, but we can focus locally and at the state level to really drive change. In that, though, we definitely do talk to our elected officials locally and try to figure out solutions for folks when it comes to that. So it's really dependent on the messaging. I think we have a great opportunity in Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I think it's home, and specifically Arlington is home to we have a great opportunity to really be the model of what is it that we could be. That's one of the challenges. Yes, some of the folks might be disenfranchised back at home, and here we have that opportunity to shift that around. If we are proactively thinking, just like you were sharing, we were inviting folks to talk about housing affordability, and even if they were not speaking in English, that's one great first step. How can we improve upon that? How can we bring them? How can the commerce be a part of that? How can NAACP be part of that?
And I think one of the things when we think about at the local level, what becomes very positive and reinforcing is that we can make a change. That, especially in a compact community like ours, but I'm sure this is true in larger communities as well, you can get to the county board, you can get to commissions, you can have that voice heard. You're not one of 300 plus million people. You're one of 200 and something thousand. You're right there in the neighborhood. You see people walking down the street day to day. And I know for me, that's something that feels good, that when I'm engaging with my civic association or when I go to the county board and I see change that I've advocated getting made, it encourages me to do more and to engage more and to listen more and to participate more. And I think that's a very positive thing. Again, especially sometimes when it can feel like we're shouting into the well at a national or global level, regardless of the circumstances. Here locally, you can always make that difference.
Yeah, and I think the beauty behind civic engagement, which is tonight's discussion, is that we can bring everyone together, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, background, and work on common goals. And the NAACP understands that. Arlington is a very diverse and inclusive community. And what I've experienced over the past 10 years of living here is so many civic organizations working together for common causes. There's more that needs to be done, but the NAACP takes pride in what that stands for, and inclusivity that we represent and try to represent and project throughout America. So I will tell you, coming up down in South Carolina as a young kid, I was introduced to civic engagement at the age of 15, where my mother and father took me to an NAACP event. Didn't know what that was all about, but we were in a church, and it was embedded in me early on. And here I am today, an adult with adult children and still involved. But I also think there's more we can do with like-minded organizations, even here in Arlington, to work collaboratively together on common causes.
And I think that I think sometimes the organizations over time, becomes, sometimes a smaller group of people and other people feel like that organization's not for me, I don't belong there. And so I think just as the county board has trouble convincing everybody, come on in and be part of it, I think civic associations have that job. I imagine the NAACP does, and maybe even CASA. So I don't know what we can do to make everybody kind of feel like, I think in an ideal world, everybody would feel like if they lived in Arlington, they had to be, wanted to be, needed to be involved in the community somehow, and feel like that they counted and were important.
One thing that I've heard in talking to friends is that I think many people they just might not necessarily be involved in the community in the ways that we classically think as community engagement.
That's right.
So thinking about the Arlington Way, we have a set of organizations. I mean, civic associations play very largely in that. NAACP, because of the chamber, all certainly play roles and get looked to be the voices of certain groups, and we're all going to keep doing that, and I think we're going to keep doing it well. But for example, I know people who say, you know what, I'm into, my kids play soccer, and that's where I'm spending my weekends, and being part of the youth soccer organization is their community engagement. And so it's a matter not of saying to them, oh, you now need to take 2 hours out of every month and go sit in a civic association, though if you live in Clarendon Courthouse, you are certainly more than welcome to come. But also to say, all right, soccer or art or, going out and joining our nightlife or reading or what have you, this is where you get to participate, and let's meet you where you are.
And we are actually doing some of that. In fact, at our public spaces master plan, we were talking about how they were going to like bars to get the millennials and stuff, trying to get, with a clip support, trying to ask questions, go to farmers markets and, trying to go out where people are. I don't know if we've done churches yet, but that's a great place to meet people. So that's really, I think it's a challenge for all of us.
I think it's the place, but it's also definitely the message. Something that with the organizers that we have at CASA, one thing, we provide services. Another thing, we do political advocacy. Another thing, we look to organize our community so that we are stronger when we're advocating for specific policies, pro-immigrant policies. But one of the things that is a challenge when it comes to how do we engage folks instead of telling them, oh, come here and meet us for 2 hours. But one of the things that we have been modifying through the past years, specifically talking to the issues, but not talking to the issues and say, look, we're going to solve them together. It's having a much more clearer understanding that this is your responsibility for you to take action and for you to take part in this. Civic engagement is not me telling you. Civic engagement is me telling you, and you are creating a conscious mind and understanding that you are part of this solution and that you're going to take part of it. And so that involves everybody, because not only does it involve those who are directly affected by policies, that's why we tell them, organize yourself so that you can go and advocate against elected officials who might be in favor or who might be against or who might not tell you. And so ultimately it's always having step-by-step conversation, but at the end of the day, making sure that those community members understand that civic engagement in its essence has to happen. It has to be part of your responsibility, just like cleanliness, just like food, just like all of this. It should be part of the responsibility of social being. So that's why when we say we're fighting for social justice, the social part is first. That's you. So we have to really drive that message home.
Do you all think that the people that you work with feel like they have efficacy, like what they do matters, that it makes a difference? Because I think to get people to, work on these things, they have to think that it's going to actually work. It's going to get them something, right? So.
All right. Great question, Libby. I will tell you, in the past year or so, there's one of the issues we've been addressing at the local branch of the NAACP is just that. One, how do we measure the effectiveness of our branch? In what ways are we doing that? What I'm hearing and what I'd heard before I took over as president was that people didn't really know what the NAACP was doing in the community. So when we started off in my tenure in December 2018, one of the things we talked about was milestones. This is what we're going to do in the next quarter, next year or so, and be more inclusive and bring people in. Not that the NAACP was not doing that, but we wanted our members and we wanted people that were interested in the NAACP to be like, wow, okay, the NAACP is active and they are engaging with the community.
It's good to have those metrics. I think that helps.
Yeah.
What about you, Luis?
The metrics, the feeling, but more than anything, it's you will see it. You will measure efficacy in many different ways. But if people are showing up and if they are engaging, so that part of civic engagement, if they are engaging, if they are taking leadership, if they are driving that message home, and that's one of the quotes that I always really go back to, a quote from Ella Baker. Strong people don't need strong leaders. So that's why that's kind of the message that we try to instill within CASA, but even broadly within the community. They shouldn't look towards elected officials. They shouldn't look towards organizations. We are just a tool, an instrument for the community. If it's organized, to come in, do civic engagement, advocate, and then find solutions broadly for all of the people. So the more that we look at things that way, and the more that people look at things that way, the more that they're going to be engaged. At the end of the day, we're not going to solve all of the things, all of the big issues that we have nationally and locally. We are just an instrument for them to use us.
I think, Luis, you hit on a really good metric for efficacy, and that is, are people showing up? Time was that people joined a community organization because it was the right thing to do. That time has long since passed. I know we're all engaged with membership organizations, and I know what keeps all of us up at night is how do we demonstrate value of membership to members and prospective members. And I think that's an important point. If people are coming, that means you're doing that well. And then it's a matter of listening to people, what brought them in, what's the right bundle, how do you help them? And that can be different for different members. I'm sure in all of our organizations we have members who do come for one reason, members who come for another. But what's cool about what we do as engagement leaders is we're convening. We're bringing those people who might otherwise have disparate interests together and letting them network and find that commonality in places where they can join together.
So I think we're getting a different definition of leadership. So when you said, I think we always need strong leadership, but what is leadership? And I think what the two of you have been talking about, and you as well, it's leadership is sometimes setting up the structure to allow people to exhibit leadership and become strong and foster what, the power that they have. And that's actually strong leadership. It doesn't look like a strong leader, but that's actually how you do it, I think.
Yeah. And I think without civic engagement, you can't have that leadership. And so I think this type of conversations is what we need to have with people. Definitely, we need to sit down and really take the patience. I think we might be, given the politics, given the speed of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, even here in Arlington, everything moves so fast. We really have to step back and listen to people. Something you said earlier, when people are coming in and you listen to them, I think that's one of the fundamental things. When we're listening to people, their concerns, and then once you identify what are their concerns, what are the issues that they care about that directly affects them, how can we make sure that they are in a better place tomorrow? So I think that's what leadership is.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was literally just thinking that. I don't think it's just metropolitan DC. I think this is a broader issue. I don't even think it's necessarily just a United States issue.
Yeah.
I think there's something in the culture we see it globally, where people don't listen. And I think with the change in media, and I'm not blaming the tools, but as we've transitioned the form of media we use, it allows people who can jump out and project to have they get that first mover play. And I think we're in a place of reacting to that, where people say, well, these people are loud and making themselves heard and they're being strident. So if they're winning, I need to do that with my view. And so we're in a shout fest. And what makes it extra hard to come and have that calm dialogue, and listening gets extra difficult when everyone's talking.
Sometimes I think you get the people having this kind of a dialogue, shouting at each other, and everybody else they're doing their thing and working around and maybe doing their own. They're just going to keep their heads down and let those guys shout.
Well, speaking to that point, one thing I'm proud about as far as the NAACP is that I mentioned earlier at the onset of this conversation, 110 years, right? And we're able to stick around for 110 years is because we don't change the pillar and the mission of the NAACP. And we're open, once again, to everyone. I think no matter what organization or civic group you have to remain steadfast. Leadership is important. I did 26 years in the Marine Corps, right? And leadership doesn't come by just reading it out of a book. It comes from sometimes lived experiences. You have to be there, doesn't that get your hands dirty? And it's important that we have good, steadfast leaders in these organizations to project and understand some of the facets of what you're talking about as it relates to the role of media and what's going on, and also understand this day and age, our youth, like what do they want to see? What do they want to do? There's so many areas of concern, and but we can get there. I believe we can.
Yeah, I think the role of media is, it's interesting. If you know somebody, I mean, I'm sure you probably had this in a working situation. If you know somebody personally, and then you start exchanging emails or Facebook, whatever, it goes so much better than if the only way you know somebody or get the message is through the media. And I think that's maybe where some of all these organizations come in, is that you bring people together so they get to know each other face to face, the old-fashioned way. And then the newer tools probably are much more effective, I think, if you can do that.
You said the old-fashioned way, and I just want to throw this in. I have a 25, a 24, and a 20-year-old. And I grew up, I'm an extrovert, right? We also have to be mindful, we need to help people work on their interpersonal skills, right?
Yeah,
you can't relate everything by way of the internet, right? And with these civic organizations, when you're talking about outreach, you need to go where the rubber meets the road, whether it's the church, whether it's at the schools, wherever it may be. And those are things I just want to bring up that we need to be doing.
I agree 100%. Emotional intelligence is critical in anything that we're doing. I'm an introvert as well. You might not think so now, but maybe 16, 17 years ago, if I went to the store, I wouldn't be able to have a conversation with the cashier. However, due to my lived experiences, I had to come out of my shell and say, I cannot stay this way. I grew up undocumented, and I have DACA, the program that President Obama pushed through advocacy, that young leaders went and advocated, and he was pushed to do this as well. So we need both. That's leadership. We have the community, and then we have leadership in elected office, coming together to find a solution, one of the solutions that we need. And what I mean to say, what is the point that I'm trying to get to? Media is very important. I think it can be a tool. It's changing, but we have to adapt. For even my own organization and several organizations that I see, the political parties haven't adapted yet. We continue this way of thinking of, we're using media and we're telling you this is what we think. And so maybe we need to think of media as an engagement tool. Now, I don't have the solutions. However, I've been trying different tests. I was advocating at the state level. I was the lobbyist for CASA before in the previous years. And so I created a Facebook page. I asked people, and then I listened. What is the medium that you use the most? And people said Facebook. I started using a Facebook account. It wasn't even the organizational one. People followed it because I was talking to them. I was talking to them about access to driver's licenses, for example, in Spanish. And I'm like, this is the structure of the General Assembly. This is the people that are voting for it. This is the people that are voting against it. This is where they live. And so people were following. It got to the point that it has thousands of followers. And now my challenge is to figure out how to get my organization, now that I'm in this current position as a director, how can I create a culture within my organization that it's not me as an individual, but it's within my organization that we're engaging. And so that's a different type of civic engagement digitally now.
It's digital. I think on the face-to-face point, I think one thing that has adapted, maybe it was always this way, but I think is very true in our culture now, is that people have a very low tolerance for feeling uncomfortable or unwanted. I know, I think especially in my civic association role, but I can think of a few others I've had, I am hyper aware of newcomers and making sure that they feel welcome, and not just for me, not just that I walk up and say, hi, I'm Scott, I'm the president, welcome, sign in, hope you stay, but making sure that old timers who are kind of used to things being a certain way, don't give them the cold shoulder and make them feel like, no, this is for me and not for you, which is a challenge because obviously you can't control the entire environment, but that's hard. People, I think if they feel I'm not wanted here, they're going to take their time elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard, and particularly here because so many people are coming. So, I mean, that helps, I think, when a lot of people are new. I think that helps a lot. But being aware, and the good thing about introverts is they listen really well. And that can be hard for somebody, particularly in my position. We're trying so hard sometimes to get our message out that you forget to listen. And that can be tricky. I hope you'll invite me to come CASA sometime too.
NAACP as well. Invite us.
Everybody do a joint meeting, which might be
Come to the
absolutely,
absolutely.
Yeah. No, that could all be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we face so many challenges that I think really taking the time to talk about them is really what makes a difference. Yeah. And I think that's once we head to that place, not just here, but everywhere where we're sitting down and we're having a conversation, that's where we will be able to look for solutions, or maybe not.
Yeah, one of the hardest things about what I do is we have to make these decisions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people, you're not listening, you didn't listen. So we listened a lot, but the answer was no.
Yes.
And sometimes they think if the answer is no, that means you haven't been listening and they just need to talk more. And it's very hard to be sensitive about that and get people to understand that sometimes we just don't agree.
And specifically about that, when we were discussing about that point earlier, where people are shouting at each other, I understand that completely because that's something to always be measuring, because I've been in both sides of the spectrum. Obviously, I've never governed. I haven't held elected office.
Someday.
Perhaps. I don't know. Every time that I spend more and more time with elected officials, I don't understand how you guys, or why you would do that. However, I've been in both sides of the table. To give you a clear example, yes, I've been at rallies, protesting, closing streets with other folks and advocates. At the same time, I've sat in the rooms, and this is rooms where you're having a conversation with elected officials, and you're telling them, regardless of the political party, this is the issue that my community cares about, and you have to demonstrate strength there. Demonstrate strength of, this is why I care about this issue, and this is why you need to listen. So that's one conversation, and at the same time, it's so difficult to always be measuring that, because the effectiveness of it, the efficacy of it, because I think it's always a reminder. The advocate needs to remember that tactic will not always work. You can't just shout your way into effectiveness. However, the elected official can also pride itself that people will always listen, because they always have to be measuring whether they are truly serving. So that's ultimately what I think we need to talk about, because I've been on both sides. I was door knocking, for example, for our current governor, but when the scandal happened with our governor, on that next Monday, I was in Richmond with the speaker, and I would say, things need to change.
And to what you just said, you brought up Richmond. So with the NAACP, we look at all aspects. We're nonpartisan, right? But organizations also and their people need to hold, if you're talking about the political aspect of it, hold their elected members to accountable. Okay. Yeah. For so long, a lot of organizations have just let it go by, from year in, from cycle to cycle. And for the NAACP, we've remained steadfast over the years of holding elected members accountable for what perhaps they've said and promised in the past, and haven't got out and done enough civic engagement, right, on behalf of the people they serve. So with our organizations, it's imperative that we hold people accountable. That's also key.
And I think, talking about showing strength, I think there's a lot in Teddy Roosevelt's old aphorism, speak softly and carry a big stick. That, if you have the courage of your convictions, if you have strong membership, and if you have facts on your side,
Exactly.
that's a lot more powerful than screaming at the top of your lungs sometimes.
I think I started out as a teacher in the Peace Corps in Africa, and I've kept those lessons because I think communication, a lot of times I try, if I do it well, and I don't always remember to do it, is to put myself in the other person's shoes and kind of see where they are, and then how I talk to them or try to communicate is affected by how I think they're receiving it, and to do that and to remember that the other person has got, you know, perspectives and ideas and is a person too, and both sides are people, that it really helps the communication. But a lot of times when you get really passionate, it's hard to remember to do that.
Yeah, and it's really hard because we talk about, yes, holding our elected officials accountable, but we also have to understand that human aspect. I, for example, put myself in the shoes of an elected official being able to govern a whole city, and I think to myself, how would they be able to reach to my community? Obviously, it's not my responsibility. However, how could I provide support? So that's when it becomes much more complex.
And that's
issue.
been really helpful, though, to
Yeah.
have somebody kind of help you and think through that. Yeah.
So that's the complexity of
Yeah.
civic engagement.
Yeah.
So we're going to all keep communicating, right?
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
are.
This is
great.
We definitely are. We
Yeah.
definitely are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, this is great. Great to see you. And yeah, invite us. We'll come and talk. I mean, I think having a county board member come doesn't have to be me. Could be one of my colleagues. It's a good
Yeah.
thing.
We're just all talking to each other too.
Yeah.
Yes, this has been great.
Exactly.
I've enjoyed it.
Thank you all.
That's great. Thank you all.
Thank you all, and fundamentally, we're here for a reason, and we're here because civic engagement brought us here, and we really would like to invite other people to participate because at the end of the day, like we said, it is their responsibility as well.
Yep,
Well,
absolutely.
you know, for all of us here in our several capacities, you know, we have 2020 right around the corner, and think part of my duty tonight as civic engagement is to remind everyone who's watching that we have the 2020 census and to participate, right? So that's
Yeah,
important as well.
absolutely.
That's a level of civic engagement where we're going to need everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be counted.
Be counted.
Be
yes.
counted, yes.